Hello and welcome to another episode of the DJ Project Criterion Collection. And here we're going to talk about Spine 491, Z, directed by Costa-Gavras, 1969. While this was his third feature, this was the film that put Costa-Gavras on the map. In fact, it had one of the unusual cases where it was nominated both for the Best Foreign Film Oscar and the Best Picture. The film itself is a very thin, fictionalized redramatization of the assassination of Grigorius Lambrakis that occurred in 1963. This is a battle of political wills in Greece, even though the predominant language spoken is French, and even though it was filmed in Algeria. So, but it's, as I said before in describing Costa-Gavras, he makes political films right, where it's a film that's clearly informed by a political situation, and you can't get any more political than Lambrakis' assassination. And then what makes this film even more bleak and certainly more timely for its time was the junta in Greece, where it reverted to a military dictatorship. And so, on the one hand, there was because in so many words, there was justice was served more or less. It clearly was an assassination and not just something accidental or whatnot. So while the crime was solved, in another sense, another political war was lost. And the film makes that very clear. So anyways, so it's a film that is politically charged, but it still doesn't take away from the entertainment value. It's still a very gripping and exciting and visceral thriller, but it just has this political message. And part of what makes I think what makes his films so great is that it doesn't, and this is something I wanted to elaborate more in regards to missing as far as related topics and such. Something that I said that to make a good political film, you have to. Part of it is that you can't alienate your audience. You can't alienate half of your audience if you take such a strong partisan stand. This does not mean that there isn't a position, that you can't take a stance. And Missing does take a stance. It's just it's not drawn by political lines. It's drawn on more human values. If you believe in the sanctity and dignity of life, you're gonna find this quite favorable and certainly hopefully above all politics. But so there are sides, but it doesn't turn partisan, it doesn't come and then by extension, the characters are not caricatures. Now it's interesting. Now does this mean that you get three-dimensional characters? Not so much, and it's not because of the political nature of the film. It's the nature of having a story-driven film. Usually, when you have a deliberately constructed story with a plot line, what often happens is that the characters are there mostly to service the plot line. Now, a better film will have characters that do a little bit more than that. There'll be some mild characterization. You get some sense of who they are, why they do what they do, what their livelihoods are like. So, and anything to generate sympathy, to provide empathy between character and audience. So the characterizations are very mild, but this is not a character study. It's not the same thing as a character study. This is a plot-driven film. It's basically it's a whodunit mystery. Although you kind of suspect what it is from the beginning, but then the question is how exactly is it all revealed? So it plays out very well like a mystery. So it is a mystery, and it's also a thriller, and so it works as a thriller first. So it must be entertaining, it must be engaging, and it must not piss off an audience. But that's the first and foremost, and then on top of that is this other layer and message, and it's in what you're trying to tell. That's when the other stuff starts to come through, and that will inspire action, it will inspire discussion, it will inspire rage, it will inspire lawsuits. It's a way of, hopefully it should generate better discussions and better solutions. But we all know that politics has its own cycle of violence, and then it just starts perpetuating the same mess over and over again. In fact, that's kind of what I've learned about with politics is that political violence is really no different than regular violence, and that you can't set yourself up this cycle of okay, one side hurts me, and then I have this vendetta against the other side, and then it's just gonna create this back and forth, and you spend most of your time fighting than you spend more time fighting than what you allege to be doing, which is helping the common man, benefiting society, all those great rhetorical devices. It becomes less believable, and it becomes clear that you're just in it for the fight. So, but yeah, Z was it's a classic of political filmmaking, and I feel that's political filmmaking done right, in that it's still an engaging story. And actually, this is why it surprisingly doesn't date. You would think by having such a specific event that happened 50 years ago, and it was made at a time when it was also made in the presence of another major political event that was happening contemporaneously with the production. You would think that, oh, this feels a little bit quaint, or this feels a little bit outdated, but surprisingly, it still has that energy, and it's because that it is a well-told story. It is a well-made film. It's another one of those films where every element works for the benefit of the whole, and it's which is to be an exciting, entertaining cinema experience, but also at the same time carry with it this with political issues and political situations and so on. So but it still works, and it's still inspiring. This was one of the films that Steven Soderbergh cited as when he was making Traffic. He would use that as a reference as to how to do it. That and the Battle of Algiers. So in Scene Z, you can see how other political films followed suit, and some of them have worked, some of them don't, but this is one of those cases where it really does work. And I think ultimately it's because the bottom line is that you have a man murdered, and for no other reason other than because he represents the other side. He represents a threat to power, and if you believe, regardless of what you believe politically, if you believe that human life has a certain dignity and value, whatever your basis is, if you believe that they were created by God or that it's or something else or some other justification. But if you believe that human life has dignity and value, then you abhor the actions. I mean, there's no beating around the bush. It doesn't matter what the guy's politics were, anybody's, and so it just shows that honestly, and it shows it more truthfully, and because of that, it's more inviting. As soon as you get into something partisan, as soon as you start drawing political lines and saying that this is good, this is bad, then you start dividing the audience. Again, you don't want to. Again, you want to increase. You want to have your box office as big as possible, and the surefire way to lower your box office returns is to piss off half of your audience. So, on whatever it is. So Costa-Gavras, rides that line very well. And again, I haven't seen all of his filmography. I've only seen Z and Missing, but the films that I have seen of his, I felt that he rides that line very well. Bravo. And that was Z. And until next time, take care.